Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cub Chat Live. This is our weekly Friday afternoon show where we talk about all things Cub Scout related. It's the best part of the week, in my opinion. And we always have special guests. This time we have a returning guest. You guys might recognize John. Last week, John joined Gina for a really nice discussion. We're going to just kind of continue on that discussion today, maybe broaden it, take it in some interesting directions. John, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm happy to be back.
Awesome. That's the problem, as you've learned being a scouting volunteer, John. When you do something well, they just ask you to do it again, do more.
That's what happens.
Exactly. John is a current Cub Master in the Seattle area, also a current Scouts BSA leader, as he tells me. So he is certainly busy. What's great about having volunteers like John on is whereas I and my good friend Gina, we work for the BSA. John is a volunteer. He knows stuff. He knows what it's like to be out there. And the topic of today's show is the pack planning conference, we'll call it, pack planning meeting, something that every pack should do maybe around this time of the year or coming up here in the next few weeks. And John, I can speak from experience as a former Cub Master myself. I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes the idea of a pack planning meeting or conference was a little bit scary, and maybe my instinct, some of our, my fellow leaders would be like, you know what, let's just wing it. It'll be fine.
Right.
But we are here. I learned from experience that's not the way to do it. Don't do that. And John is here to talk about that pack planning conference and how to make it maybe less intimidating, right? How to make it bite-sized. It seems like a big topic. John, tell us where do we even start with this whole pack planning conference thing?
Right. So, pack planning can feel really big, but the bottom line is let's focus on the goal. The goal is to provide fun program for our scouts. We want to keep it simple. We want to keep it fun, and we want to keep it engaging for our kindergarten through 5th grade, right? Our Cub Scout age scouts. So that's really the bottom line is just think about that. Now, from there, I think we've got an image for this. A lot of you are familiar with this sort of rocks in the jar analogy. It's become very popular over the last few years, but it is very apropos for what we're talking about right now. The big rocks for your Cub Scout families are school and their cultural events that they've got going on, because the bottom line is they're school-age children that we're serving. So the school calendar is by far the biggest one. And you can, we've got another image here. This is my local school district's school calendar. This dominates the K through 5 scouts, what they do, right? So when does school start? When does it end? When are all the holidays? When are the half days, right? That can actually be a really advantageous feature for some packs. So we have to take this into account first and foremost. The other thing that you really want to take into account is those cultural celebrations. Sort of a quick aside, one of we've got a very multicultural pack. We talked about that last week too. Mm-hmm. And one of the den leader is from East India in that general region. And so their family practices one of those faiths. They were scheduling a den event, a hike, and it happened to fall on Easter. And so they didn't even think about mm-hmm. that, right? But they did happen to have one family that is of a faith that does celebrate Easter. And they were like, hey, by the way, we're not going to go, but it's totally fine. You guys can go, no problem. And it's a good reminder of we've all probably, forgotten about the different cultural calendars, right? Sure. And so you want to think about that going in. So those are those big things, right? Do you need to worry about Diwali? Do you need to plan around Hanukkah, right? Whatever it happens to be. From there, you go to the next layer. What are the big pack events that we need to plan on, right? Recruiting, crossover and ranking up, and then the district and council events, right? That's free program. Your district wants you to go to camp. Your council wants you to go to camp. So making sure that you think about what are those events that you can put on your calendar. And then, like we talked about last week, that free program, super good. The next layer below that is your den meetings and your pack meetings. That's the meat and potatoes of our program. We want to make sure that we plan those early and in a very consistent manner. Some packs, you have the sort of the blessing, if you will, of it's like Wednesday. Wednesday is your pack meeting day. It's your den meeting day. You meet in the same place. You just like split out into more rooms or one room. Maybe even the troop meets on that same day. Like, that's great. Our pack doesn't have that luxury. So, for us, we have to say early on, the third Thursday of the month, that's our pack meeting day. And then each den gets to decide what cadence they use. And so you should think about what cadence your dens use. Our pack tends to use what's called a 2+2 model, which is you do kind of 2 den level things a month, often a meeting and then an outing. And then we try to go for 2 pack level things, right? Often a pack meeting and a pack level outing. Other packs do it differently, right? So you just have to figure out what works for your families and plan for that early. And then the sand in that analogy really is the smaller events, right? The hikes, going to the pumpkin patch, maybe going to the science center or the baseball game, that sort of stuff that's optional, but it fills in for a very enriching program.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. We got quite a few folks watching. I want to give a quick shout out to Sarah. She's coming to us from PAC 168 in Massachusetts. Thanks for watching, Sarah. Appreciate it. Smith's Alley, keep up the good work. Appreciate that. Wendy says hello from Elgin, Illinois, PAC 38 and Troop 38. Thank you very much. Omid is watching. Omid has a quick question. What kind of culture do you mean? Omid, I think we're talking about different religions in general, but it could be any kind of culture, right? Any kind of cultural difference. Our troop was the same way. Our PAC was the same way. Quite a few different folks from different areas of the world, which was a blessing. We loved it, but it is something else you have to consider when putting together that calendar. Hike Mike says hello from PAC 307 in Federal Way, Washington. Thank you for watching. Appreciate that. Right in your neighborhood, I think.
Right down the road. Yeah.
Awesome. I want to comment real quick. A couple of things you said that stuck out at me. The school calendar. Mm-hmm. Boy, that is a calendar that, families of elementary age kids are already kind of living by that calendar, right? We had ours printed out for years on the fridge, and you look at when spring break is. That's if you're going to go out of town in the spring, you're probably going to do it that week, right? Christmas break, obviously, it's not always the same for every school district. So you plan it for your district, what you're going to do. For my PAC personally, we met on Mondays. We felt like for us, that gave us a nice little cadence. We would take on those Monday holidays. That was a nice little break. We would take those days off. We went by the school calendar. That's just what worked for us. So, boy, 100% agree. Checking out that school calendar. And then also you mentioned the district and council events. Your council probably has a calendar on their website. If they don't already have it up for next year, we're going to soon. Bring that to your PAC meeting as well. Who knows what kind of cool campouts and events they have that you can incorporate into your program or not. Great thing about those is that they're optional. So again, John, it seems like it could kind of be complicated. This whole thing, there's a lot of things you have to think about, a lot of different calendars, a lot of different schedules. It still seems like it could be kind of complicated to me. What are some tips you can share with us to make this PAC planning outing successful?
Right. So, the running joke is like, when I'm at a Scouts BSA meeting, I say, do your best. And they say, no, that's a Cub Scout thing. Right. And in this sort of case, it's the opposite, right? The answer is be prepared, even though that's kind of a Scouts BSA
there you go.
thing.
Yep.
Right. And so that means having the appropriate calendars early, right? Think about who you're serving. So having that school calendar, some of them are like by law are required to publish them a year or 2 years in advance. So you should have that locked down really, really early. And then the next thing is those holiday calendars. Work with your committee, work with your den leaders, try and understand what are the important holidays that you have to serve. And there's even the downstream thing of if you've got families from other countries that maybe they go back to those countries for long holidays in the summer, take that into account as well, right? So just being prepared with all those various calendars and then doing your best, right? You can't serve everybody, so you do your best. Mm-hmm. The next thing is setting a really predictable schedule, right? So whether it's your Mondays or the first Monday or the third Thursday or whatever it happens to be, setting that early and having that expectation and ideally over many years, right? So your PAC is like a Wednesday PAC or whatever it happens to be. And then the next big thing is doing a planning conference, right? So as this sort of talk is discussing, the planning takes time. And so you want to actually sit people down and make them feel comfortable and make them want to invest in this process. And that means having a team that wants to be there. And so some tips for that really are around like maybe have a barbecue, maybe do it on a camp out so that the scouts are otherwise already entertained. I know some PACs, they do it at a bar and grill, right? And so, we're talking about Scouty things, so obviously be Scouty appropriate, but at the same time, like you want people to be comfortable, right? So make them feel like they have the time, like tell them, please set this time aside. Let's take the time to do it right for our families. Because if we do it right now, it will pay off in spades for the rest of the year. And then the next big thing is don't forget logistics. It's everybody's favorite topic, right? Do you need reservations for campsites? Do you need to register for camp early because it fills up quickly? Is there a separate cost? Do you need to build this into your annual dues? Do we need to do separate fundraising for some of these events? And then is this event for everybody or is it for a subset of the PAC? Is it best suited for, your Lions, your Tigers, Maybe the Wolves, maybe yes, maybe no. Or is it more for the older kids, right? Is this a Webelos AOL and maybe even the Bears? Like we're trying to get them prepped towards Scouts BSA, right? So thinking about the appropriateness of these events are all things to consider. But the bottom line is really just take the time, set aside that time, and get people to come together and be focused on doing it, because it does take a little bit of focus to do it right.
Yep. Yeah, I think for a lot of folks, especially new Cub Scout volunteers, which we've got a lot of this fall, thankfully, across the country, it can seem intimidating.
Right.
But I think you're right. Take a deep breath, go somewhere comfortable. Don't try to be too formal. I love the idea of having a barbecue or doing it at a camp out or even at a restaurant or something like that. Definitely will pay off dividends in the long run. Rob points out, don't forget those district council events. I agree. And one thing about that, Rob, and this is probably true whether you're going camping at, say, a local state park or something like that, these folks require reservations, right? The council wants to know how many people are going to show up. So correct me if I'm wrong, John, when you put, we're on this weekend, we're going to go to this district event or this council event, you also might want to add the calendar. When's the deadline for the RSVP for that? How much does it cost? That may be a week or two earlier or something like that. That goes on your calendar as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's part of that logistics stuff of understanding, like, okay, this event, like for our council, winter camp fills up really, really quickly. So the instant we get people signed up in the fall, we're already pushing winter camp, right? Because we know that will fill up. So us just saying we want to go, we can't just go. It does require reservations and stuff. So we actually make sure that we've got a reservation system that we do and a plan for here's the cutoff date. And after that, you're kind of on your own, that sort of stuff. Hike Mike, I believe he's out of Federal Way. He's got a good question around how do you schedule den activities that have a pack meeting component? It's a great question. And the answer is you want to think about that as a part of your planning process. If you take the time to look at the whole program and have the den leaders have input, the den leaders should be at these planning conferences because they should put their hand up and say like, hey, don't forget, I want to do Bear Carnival. That needs a pack meeting component.
Right.
Great. Then that goes into your plan. And we'll kind of discuss that a little later. The other thing is that you might do that not at a pack meeting, but at a special event, right? So if they come in late, you can still accommodate it in another way, right?
Yeah, perfect. Quick shout out to Christine, who's watching from Pack 100 in Bossier City. Anthony is watching from Pack 296 in Wilmington, North Carolina. Another question, and this is a common thing that Jeremy asks, planning around sports, practicing games, go all 7 days a week. There's only so much you can do. But John, I wonder if you have, based on your experience, any thoughts on trying to plan around youth sports?
Right. So there's a couple ways I've seen this work. So one way is you want to get your calendar in early, because if you're there first, you can say, look, we're only asking for 1 day a week, or, one weekend a month. Let's just say for the sake of discussion, 1 day a week and 1 weekend a month, or maybe even just two or 3 days total out of the month. If they're not willing to commit to that, then there is the aspect of like, maybe they're just not committed to scouting, and that's unfortunate, but that is what that is.
Sure.
But for many of those activities, if they care about scouting, they will say, you know what, I want this 1 day, and the coach will be reasonable about it, right? So that's an important thing. Get your calendar in early and have a lot of clarity very, very early so that they can make informed decisions about what's going on. The other thing that I've run into is that there are some packs that like a huge amount of their pack does a seasonal sport. Like their pack happens to be baseball kids, or they happen to be football kids or whatever.
Right.
And so one pack I knew they actually had sort of like the football group and then the baseball group. So they actually ran the program essentially twice, and they ran like the fall group. They just sort of assumed that they weren't there during baseball season. And then the spring group that they knew were in football season. And so every adventure got ran twice, and maybe that works for your pack. It's a lot of work.
Right.
But if you split into 2 dens for that age group, then again, maybe like those dens end up being in sync by the time summer comes along. There's a lot of creative solutions to these sorts of things, right? Don't look at it as problems, look at it as opportunities. And what is the primary goal we're trying to solve? We're trying to have the youth have fun, engage, and build strong citizens based on the oath and the law, right? That's the mission that we're entrusted with implementing.
We had a kind of a similar scenario in my son's Scouts BSA unit. They had a lot of members who were in marching band. So their Friday nights in the fall, 10 or so weeks in a row were taken care of. So you just plan that in your schedule. They're not going to be able to camp on Friday nights until we get more into winter and the spring. It's a lot of balls to juggle in the air at the same time. but that's just what we have to deal with.
Right. That's the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. The Crater Lake Council is watching today, and they said that they shared this event. I think they're talking about this live event right now with all the PACs in their council. Thank you for doing that, guys. We appreciate it. Eugene from PAC 208 in Lexington, North Carolina, says that their DENs, PAC, and troop all meet at the same time, same place, and it works well for us. I've heard that quite a bit lately. Yeah, that's great. When I was a Cub Master, Mondays was Cub Scout night. Whether it was a PAC meeting or a DEN meeting, we tried to make sure everybody met on Mondays at the school. They were nice enough to let us meet in the cafeteria. We had a lot of room. And like I said, the holidays kind of worked out great because that was kind of a natural break for us. That's what worked out for us. I've heard some folks do it on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, whatever night. Some folks do it on Sundays, whatever works out for you guys. That is great. Christine says they have their bears do their carnival games for their Halloween meeting. So they schedule that into their Halloween meeting every single year. Perfect. I love that very, very much. And we got a few more quick shout outs, John. Michael from PAC 252 in Hagerstown, Maryland. Drew from PAC 435. They're right down the road from me in Fort Worth. Thank you, Drew. Appreciate that very, very much. Okay, John, speaking of serving the whole pack, all right, what are the best ways to serve such a broad range of age and abilities? We go now, I didn't have to worry about lions like you do, John. Lions are now a thing. How do we serve such a broad range of ages and abilities?
Yeah, I mean, like I like to classify it as lions are glorified preschoolers, right? For a good chunk of the year. Totally. And the AOLs, the fifth graders, they're just shy of middle schoolers. So it's a really, really huge age range and cognitive range and all that sort of stuff. So the thing that you fall back on is remember that the oath and law are the core of what we do. And there's a lot of common themes that you end up seeing in the adventures. So things like duty to country, aquatics, outdoorsy things, physical fitness. These are all things that are part of the oath and the law that you see in adventures at every level. And so the great thing about that is if you plan events around those common themes, you can satisfy many different levels for where they're at. Now, that can be intimidating, especially for new volunteers. But one of the great things is that there's a lot of great people out there that have actually gone through and done the 4D chess of figuring out which adventures map to which themes. And then you can plan, instead of around an adventure, you can plan around a theme. So for example, Sam Houston Council has done a really, really great job at this. They've got a whole program planning guide that you can go check out. And you basically go through and you say, hey, I want to do aquatics. That's an easy one to call out, right? So we've got an aquatics themed month, and we're going to do like a pool party because that just makes sense. So that'll be the day that we go and actually get in the water. Well, you can look and you can say, okay, well, a bunch of the ranks have reach, throw, go. And so, here's what you get signed off for, Spirit of the Water for wolves. And here's the Aquanaut Award for the Weebelows and the AOLs, right? And they're going to have similar things, but some differences. And so you can hit the highlights of many of those things, maybe leave a little bit to the den leader to fill in if you want. Mm-hmm. And then you can satisfy lots of people's needs. So that's a really easy way to say, like, I don't know what to do at my pack meeting, but if I'm serving everybody with a common theme, then at least everybody gets something.
Yeah, perfect. That was, if you're a den leader, Cub Master, I would almost say even a parent, you should have your council website bookmarked, the calendar bookmarked, and maybe even your district. They may have their own sub website for people who may not know. Every council has a certain number of districts. So your pack is in a district. There may be district level events online to learn about, council level events, planning resources like the one we just showed you guys from the Sam Houston Council. Shout out to those guys who are doing a great job. Elizabeth makes a really good point here, John. If den planning doesn't work, ask the parents to sit with you and help them plan. They will understand better how it works. Do you invite, John, parents? Is your den planning conference open to parents?
Absolutely. Right. So, I mean, in a perfect world, when we've done it, you end up basically saying like, everybody can come and it's just whoever you get, if you don't vote, you don't get to complain. Right.
Yeah, totally. And Hike Mike has another question. You might be about to address this, but we'll address it now. When do you start your pack planning, John?
Oh, that's a great question. So a lot of times, like right now is actually a really good time. So spring and early summer is a really, really great time because then by that time you've got most of the current year stuff is on autopilot, right? Most of the kids have earned their ranks. So you're not like focused on making sure that they're getting done. You can really just focus on, okay, we've got our plan from last year. Now let's focus on next year. The adults that you've got involved have ideally been in their positions for most of the year, right? So even if they were brand new at the beginning of the year, they've now got at least 6 months of tenure. So now is a great time to do it. Summer can be okay. The challenge is that you start to get people disappearing on vacation, and you start getting people that maybe they're no longer in the same position that they were in, right? So doing it before you get those end of the year transitions is a really good idea. So winter or spring tends to be a really great choice. But any time is a good time, and you don't have to do it just once. Revisiting that plan is also critical.
Yeah. Elizabeth says she has a bear den, and the parents are very thankful to be involved in the planning process. Very, very cool, Elizabeth. Eugene also gives a shout out to the Sam Houston Council. She says, or they say that website is their #1 resource to go to for a new den leader. Christine says that all of their dens participate in visits from first responders when that happens, because they can fulfill requirements for the different ranks. Webelos, Tigers, and Lions can check off requirements. Yeah, so things like that when you can multitask. Very, very cool. John, I feel like I'm starting to get the idea.
Okay.
You've finally gotten it through my head, kind of how this all works. So maybe now you can walk us through the typical planning process, the nuts and bolts. How do you actually do this thing?
Right, absolutely. So let's just walk through. This is literally the process that I used this past year. So this is speaking from my own experience. So I started out with a blank calendar, as you would. And the way I chose to do it was August through July. Now, we know that the Scouts cross over at the end of June, beginning of June, in that time frame. But for me, I sort of think of our school year starting at the end of August. So August felt like a good time to start the calendar, and then July at the end, because we tend to do summer camp in July. So that's why I chose this particular set of months. So remember that the first thing we took into account was the school calendar. So that's what we just kind of went through. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about, okay, we need school age kids to show up, right? Well, let's get them back from summer, right? So we tend to have a back to the pack field day, as we call it, kind of a back to school thing, but we call it back to the pack because it's kitschy. And it's just meant to be a come, hang out, play games in the park. There's not a lot of structure. It's just meant to be sort of a class reunion for the Scouts, if you will. And we're not trying to get dens together, but if they happen to, cool, right? We're just getting people together. And we'll invite Scout troops too to come to this to help run some of the games. So it's service hours for the Scout troops. It helps the Scouts see older Scouts. It's all goodness, right?
And so am I correct, in an event like that, John, you might not be focused so much on checking off advancement and achievements. Is that right?
Correct.
You're just having fun. Perfect. Love it. Yep.
It's just fun. We're really just trying to reinforce that Scouts do stuff. That's our thesis for our pack. Scouts do stuff. Yeah. Let's be active, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
And then in September, like once school is settled down, like we meet on the third Thursday of the month. So we give people a couple of weeks into the school year. Things have settled down. Then we have a welcome back night. And we say like, hey, we'll have a parent meeting. And then we want to do something active that is an incentive for the kids to show up. Like they don't want to hear more talking. They just got back to school. They don't want more school. Right. So one of the things we've done a couple of times is a water bottle rocket launch. It's a very traditional Cub Scout activity. Mm-hmm. Now, we chose to do it where you build it on the Thursday pack meeting, but you have to come back 3 days later at the Saturday in order to actually launch it. And different people do it different ways. We actually do have building supplies available on site on Saturday, but the intent there is like a kid built this rocket. They're going to go and say, Mom, I want to come back. Dad, I want to come and launch this rocket. Well, come back on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And if you've got them at 2 events, then you've usually they're engaged. They're ready to go.
Perfect.
Right?
Yeah. What a great way to start off the school year, right? Or the Cub Scout year.
Yeah. And so whatever it is, you need some sort of welcome back recruiting event type of thing, whatever that works for your pack. Now in June, I don't know if I'm going to have a pack meeting. Maybe yes, maybe no, right? Like we might be done by then, basically. Right. But we do need some sort of ranking up ceremony, some sort of crossover to that next rank and recognition. And so a couple of years we've done it as a camp out. That's a great way to kind of get people to be focused just on Scouty stuff for a little bit. Again, it can check off requirements. We actually cross over early in the camp out. So that way, the remainder of the camp out, they can do new requirements for their new rank, right? So they can be excited about new adventures right away. So that's how we kind of bookend the year, right? And then we go to the next level. So the next level is those district events, right? So in our district, in our council, we've got a Halloween camp in October. We've got winter camp that's usually in February and March. And then we've got resident camp, the 3-day experience in the summer, and then we tend to do that in July. Sometimes you could do it in August. For July works best for us. And again, that actually starts qualifying towards the Summer Pack Award, right? So we're doing one thing each month in the summer. So we do those, but we don't really have any themes for the remainder of the meetings. That's okay. So let's go to that next layer. So then the next layer is those big marquee events, and that's Pinewood Derby, Blue and Gold, maybe Rain Gutter Regatta, right? Like whatever your pack does. So we say, okay, well, we're going to do Pinewood Derby in January. Why? Well, because crossover for the AOLs, the fifth graders, they're going to cross over to an older kids unit, Scouts BSA, in either February or March. So we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to do one last Pinewood Derby. So we're going to do it in January. And the other reason we do it in January is if we give out the kits in December at our pack meeting in December, then they've got the holiday break to work on it with their family. And especially because families get together, they might go to grandma and grandpa's shop or whatever, right? So we give them the maximum amount of time to be able to actually do a good job on their Pinewood Derby stuff. So that means we're going to distribute the kits in December. We're going to have impound. So our pack is kind of medium to large size. So we can't take the cars in, weigh them all, and then race them the same day. That gets to be too much. So we impound them at the January pack meeting. Then we race them at the Derby again, like 3 days later. For February, that's traditionally Blue and Gold. Not quite sure what the theme is yet, but we know we're going to do Blue and Gold in February. And let's just say for March, Rain Gutter Regatta, it's just fun. And we'll probably do a pool party or some aquatic themed thing to go along with that. So we're starting to fill in. We're very doughy, but that's okay, right? So let's go to the next layer. So now we're going to start filling in with those pack meeting and den meeting themes. So I'm primarily focusing on the pack meeting themes here. So October, you've got Halloween. So you could do a costume contest, den, trunk or treat. This year, what I chose to do is we brought in cosplayers, people that love to do costumes all throughout the year because they're into that sort of thing. And we had them come and show how they make their costumes. And then the activity was making costume parts sort of thing, right? So it was topical, right? So you can riff on the themes. For November, traditionally that's Veterans Day. And so duty to country. So you're going to bring in, like, let's say a canine officer. We've done that a couple of times. The kids love it. Dogs with a job. We'll probably do a hike because the weather's still okay. Thinking about the weather is super important for where you're at. If it's too hot to do stuff, too cold to do stuff, too rainy, whatever. Gear checks are great for Scouts BSA, but they're miserable for Cub Scouts. So just understand who you're trying to serve.
Sure.
December, that's the end of the year holidays for many families. And it's a time of reflection, time of giving to others and giving back. So maybe we'll do a service project of some sort at the pack meeting. And then a lot of the local zoos in our area do zoo lights, right? So that's a fun, different way of going and experiencing that location. For the Blue and Gold, starting to think, okay, what would a theme be? Maybe an indoor campfire, right? If you haven't done one, it's actually kind of fun. Skits and songs. You don't have to just do those outside. You can do them at your normal pack meeting. And then April's Earth Day month. So for April, let's dive deep on Leave No Trace and something related to that. And then maybe go to a farmer's market or an organic farm or something like that, right? Again, we've got a family in our pack where the mom is actually, she runs one of the farmers markets. So I'm basically just saying, this is your pack meeting. You do whatever you think is best, delegate away. Right.
Perfect. Yeah.
And then from there, we got a couple of spots left. Let's figure out what to do. Okay. Well, let's just fill in. Well, May, we didn't have anything. Let's do a STEM day, right? Like STEM is great. Everybody kind of loves that. So we could just do like little small experiments. And again, that's one of those themes that cuts across many ranks. So you can get some rank requirements signed off at the pack meeting. If you haven't thought about that, it's a great way to help your den leaders. And then a lot of the science centers and like children's museums, some of them allow sleepovers. So maybe do a sleepover at the science center. And then for June, we're thinking, okay, we weren't sure if we were going to do a pack meeting, but like our pack doesn't have Cub carts. They're kind of these push cart things. But one of the other local packs does, and we're friends with them. So they're going to let us borrow their Cub carts, and we're just going to do that. So it's not going to be a very formal pack meeting. It's just fun, right? It's just, let the kids have some chaos and embrace that. So that's the basic process that I went through. Obviously, accelerated. But hopefully that's pretty straightforward, the high level thought process.
Yes. Awesome. So now we've got, as you can see there, folks, a calendar kind of penciled in. Looks like you've come up with a great program plan. What's the next step after that, John?
Well, you have to maintain it, right? Like you have to implement it. And so calendars are living, breathing beasts in and of themselves. And so no plan survives that first interaction, right? So
Yep.
our calendar, it's going to change, right? And so ours did too, because like my daughter this year, she crossed over in December because she was forming a new girls troop and we wanted that whole charter year. So she crossed over in December instead of February. So we moved that indoor campfire because that's what that den really wanted for their crossover. We moved that to December. What are we going to do with February? Well, I asked my bear den leader, hey, can you do the bear carnival in February? So we adjusted that calendar accordingly. And that's okay, right? The calendar pivoted based on real-time negotiations with the various adults involved and the needs of the youth, right? And then the other big thing is keep track of how things are doing, right? So for those of you who've gone to Wood Badge, hashtag don't forget about Wood Badge. We talk about like start, stop, continue, roses and thorns, like those sort of exercises to review how things are going. So make sure you go back and kind of record the information of, hey, Bear Carnival went great this year. Here's what worked. Oh, Rain Gutter Ricotta was total chaos this year, but not in a good way. Here's the types of things that went sideways.
There you go.
Just be aware of that for next time. And then don't forget everybody's favorite logistics, right? Just because you put it on the calendar doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? So you need to make sure that you've got adults assigned to follow up with, hey, if we want to go to winter camp, somebody's got to make sure we submit all of our scouts to actually go to winter camp and collect the money. And, do we need to fundraise? All those logistical fun things.
We have, as always with Cub Chat Live, tons and tons of wonderful comments. I might not have time to get them all, read them all live, guys, but I encourage you, if you're watching, go in and read the comments. A lot of good ideas. Speaking of calendars being living and breathing things, James says they have 2 different planning sessions, one in July, one in January, February. They have a rolling 12-month plan, but by meeting every 6 months, they can update it based on the recruiting, fundraising, different things like that. I think that's exactly what John means when he says it's a living, breathing thing, right? Perfect.
Super good idea.
Yeah. Wendy says they're starting their planning now so they can determine dues and have that information for new families that may want to join when they hit the ground running with that school fall season. They already have all that important information ready to go. Agree 100%. Rob is reminding everyone to check their district calendar to find out what they do, something called a program preview, which is also a very cool thing that a lot of councils and districts do when they basically sort of present their program for the next year. Attending that, very, very beneficial, Rob. I agree with that. You can incorporate a lot of those things into your calendar. Jeremy has a question about fundraising, in particular, the popcorn kickoff and things like that. Do you guys work that into your schedule too, John?
So our pack's a little unique. We actually don't do popcorn at all. We don't do any fundraising. That's actually an advertisement compared to some of the other youth programs that we serve. So we're a family pack. So we don't do that. And the reason is because we want our adults focusing on scouting. And many of our families, given our community, would have bought out of fundraising purposes. But at the same time, if you are going to do fundraising, you do absolutely have to plan for that because that's effectively a pack event. You need adults for it. You need to think about where that money's going. If your fundraising sort of falls short, do you need time for a filler event or a capital request from the adults that might be able to do it? So yes, you must plan that as a part of your overall calendar if you're going to be doing popcorn or whatever.
Yeah, and speaking of having the calendar living and breathing, if you come up short with one fundraiser, you might have to schedule another one. If you have, if you do great, maybe you don't need that second one. So that's the kind of thing that you can sort of improvise as you go forward. Again, tons and tons of great comments. I'm so sorry that I can't read all of them, guys, but you guys are coming up with some great ideas. John, before we let you go, any final thoughts on program planning?
Yeah. So, I mean, two really quick thoughts. So one of them is remember to keep it simple, keep it fun, right? Scouts want to do fun stuff, active stuff, right? So it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to look like whatever you see on Pinterest or whatever. Like, just keep it fun, right? And then the other really big thing is novelty is key. So consider a 3 or a 4 year cycle of what types of activities you do. So if you went to the Science Center last year, maybe don't go to the Science Center this year. Maybe instead go to the Natural History Museum. Because if you go to the same place over and over again, you'll start seeing dwindling attendance. But if you keep it rotated every 3 or 4 years, by the time you go through again, that kindergartner is now a 3rd or a 4th grader, and it'll be new to them, and they're not going to be complaining, oh yeah, we did that last year. So being able to rotate through while still staying with similar things gives you a good balance of familiarity, but also novelty.
Perfect. Rusty from Pack 84 is watching from New Philadelphia, Ohio. Rusty, you logged in at 2:32, buddy. We need you here at 2:00. Okay, what are you doing? Kidding. I appreciate you tuning in, Rusty. A lot of folks saying very helpful, including our own Mike says the step-by-step walkthrough very helpful. Sarah is a first-year DIN later, probably be taking over as Cub Master. She says, Sarah, we'll be praying for you. Yeah, I'd do it. I agree. I'd do it. Says this has been very helpful. Great show for the second week in a row. John just knocks it out of the park. Can't thank you enough for coming on today, my friend. We really appreciate it.
Happy to help.
Yeah. Thank you all for watching. And again, no problem, Rusty. We forgive you. It's okay. Thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate it very, very much. Just a reminder for Rusty, who might have tuned in late, and for everybody else, this show will live on forever on this Facebook page right now. You can always go back and watch it. You can continue to comment. You can continue to share it with your friends, as some of our other commenters have done. We appreciate it very much. Good show. Good advice, John. Thanks again so much. We hope all of you watching at home have a great weekend. We will see you next week on Cub Chat Live. Thanks, everybody. Bye, John. See you, bud.